Chapter 22 is called, let me have a look, The Last Days and Parallax Living. All I mean by parallax living is the way in which existence in the last days both needs to take account of what has already happened, cross and resurrection, and what has not yet happened, the return of Christ and the final judgment and so forth. It's this now and not yet motif that Christians regularly talk about. And in this chapter, I also talk about the in but not of idea that you get in Jesus' high priestly prayer in John 17, that Christians are in the world, Jesus' followers are in the world, but they're not of the world. And I try and tease out some of the implications of this. And this was really fun because it's one of those terms that I'd heard in so many sermons, now and not yet, and so forth. We're living in this in-between times. But I'd never really sat down to try and tease out what that means for all different areas. And I had the opportunity to do that in this chapter, which was lovely. And so what have we got here? We've got, the desacralization of politics. The idea that this worldly politics can never be ultimate in the last days, because the last days is framed by a bigger reality of an oncoming judgment. And so we can't invest our hope for heaven and hell in the political decisions or the political regimes of this age. Not to say that they're unimportant, but they cannot have an ultimate value. And I go back and forth on this a little bit. There's James K.A. Smith has a bit of a run-in with Bonhoeffer at one point where he says, Bonhoeffer says that there's the ultimate and the penultimate, but Smith says, hold on, we do invest our politics with an ultimacy, and I sort of take that argument on a couple of steps and try and sort of nuance this idea of the ultimate and the penultimate a bit. But the fundamental architecture of the chapter is that how to live in this middle time between what's already happened and what's not yet happened, and being an exile in the world, as Peter puts it. And this paradigm of exile is quite prominent in the chapter, because I think it's prominent in the way that the New Testament talks about living in these last days as well. And it's again one of these motifs that just keeps on giving, I think, the more that we think about what does it mean to be exiles in this age, in this cyclum, in this present order. It's just incredibly fruitful for Christian cultural critique and for Christian understanding of the church as well, and where we fit in the big picture of things. And I show the way that being exiles means that we neither celebrate this world in a fundamental way nor hate it in a fundamental way, and how it also helps Christians to avoid the equal and opposite pathologies of renunciation, sort of the ascetic attitude to this world, and indulgence, losing oneself completely in this world, eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. And how those two temptations of renunciation and indulgence are ever present culturally as well as individually, and how this paradigm of exile helps us to live fully in this world, fully with our treasure in heaven. In other words, not to have to compromise and find some sort of wishy-washy halfway where we're not properly living with eternity's values in view, as D.A. Carson would put it, nor properly getting stuck into trying to make this world a better place either. But how both of those can be, as G.K. Chesterton puts it, at the top of their energy at the same time, and not in conflict with each other either.